weapons come and go all the time. I'm sure you guys have seen it. Weapon will get released, they'll stay around for a couple years, maybe 10 years, maybe a couple months, and then the company will drop it because there's just not a whole lot back in it. The engineering just didn't play out. And so what's really interesting to me is when there are firearms that just stick around. Weapons like the Browning High Power, and despite the many attempts to replace it with Browning High Power updates and better handguns, it just stays around. Weapons like the 1911 now. This isn't original, it was replaced with the A1, but like the 1911 A1 that is just stuck around despite the many attempts to replace it with a better 45 caliber service weapon. Which brings us to the HK USP 45. In many ways, H&K has tried to replace this bad boy with the HK 45, and yet this weapon continues to endure and live on. In my mind, is actually a better weapon than the HK 45. HK coming at me right now. But in any case, I hope that today on Grantham, that you guys will join us as we talk and discuss and review the HK USP 45. We've had talks, me and you, about the comment section. The comment section is a little bit tame, so I want you to get in there and make it an interesting place. So make YouTube regret their decision more to keep you on YouTube. In any case, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the comments. The biggest sponsor of this channel is, of course, Brownells. A big thank you to you, Brownells. Very base. And of course, the sponsor of this particular video is Established Titles, which we'll talk about right now. Now, this video is sponsored by Established Titles. A big thank you to them if you're not familiar with Established Titles. It is a project based on the old Scottish tradition of landowners being called lairds, lords, and ladies. So you can buy as little as 1 square foot of land, and in return, Established Titles is going to plant a tree in order to support the pristine, beautiful woodlands of Scotland. Now, obviously, you get a sick little plaque. This one denotes me as Lord Grantham. Not my name, but you know, it's still pretty damn cool. Now, if you know, Kentucky Ballistics previously tragically took away my lordship by destroying my old one. However, I have been re-granted lordship. Thank you, Established Titles. So, maybe I'll take Scots at some point. You can also look up the exact location of your land, and a tree is planted with every order with their global charity partners, One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future. In any case, the whole point of this project is to make a fun little way in order to help preserve those woodlands of Scotland. So go and support Established Titles. When you buy it, you of course get your official plaque, letting everybody know what cool stuff you have. And of course, you are supporting those woodlands. Now, this is also an awesome last minute gift because you know what? It's kind of goofy, it's kind of fun, and no matter what, you're supporting a good cause. Now, I am out of this game, but I understand that you can actually put this on your Tinder profile. So for you guys struggling out there, don't worry, kings. You can put Lord or ladies on your certificate. I don't think a lot of girls watch this channel, but nonetheless, you can do it. So anyhow, get in there, Established Titles, right below, Established Titles /Grantham. Use promo code Grantham and save 10% today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Let's get back to the video. Ladies, gentlemen, my often forgotten, but most certainly not by me, M57 electrical firing devices. Welcome to the channel. We're going to be talking about a very cool handgun today, and that is the USP 45. Now, before we do, it's important to me that I disclose to you what my relationship is with the company. I think it's something that should be done by every reviewer in every company. In any case, with HK, this handgun was bought by me because I like the USP quite a bit. That being said, HK has sent me firearms to review in the past, so the SP5K, the SP5, and then a rifle we haven't gotten to yet. So understand that there is that relationship there, that I do talk with these guys. That being said, I will be as unbiased as I always try to be in all of my reviews. I just think it's important that we do that. Now, as far as my notes are concerned, I have to give credit where credit is due, and that is to James Williamson, the HK expert. A big thank you to him for going through my notes with me and ensuring that my information was factual. In many ways, I check all of my information against a variety of experts before I bring anything to you guys, because I try not to put out bad information. So a big thank you to James Williamson. If you don't already follow him, he's a pretty cool guy on Instagram and does lots of great stuff. In any case, let's talk about it. Now, what's so interesting about the USP or any handgun is they don't exist in a vacuum. A product of its time, the time that it was designed. There was a lot going on that led and contributed to this particular handgun being produced. So you have to understand that at the time, HK was not in a good way. Their G11 program, which, God, I wish they'd bring it back, essentially lost steam. Funding is gone. They were in a bad way financially. Enter SOCOM asking for an offensive handgun, which ultimately led to the development of the Mark 23, of which many lessons were taken and learned when it comes to the HK USP 45 and 40, of course. Now, beyond that, at the same time, FBI was having a little bit of an identity crisis with the 9mm, LOL 9mm, and so they asked for a 10mm handgun, which of course HK is more than happy to oblige. That was of course switched after the FBI realized that people are weak and they couldn't handle the 10mm because it is a gigachad round. So the 40 Smith & Wesson was of course chosen instead. This eventually led to the development of the first USP, the HK USP 40 and 9mm. And it just has to be noted that all these things combined together to eventually bring us the 45 caliber model, but that history is important. Now, when it comes to the Mark 23, you have to understand that SOCOM, the military, is a behemoth. It moves slowly. So when they asked for an offensive handgun, and when HK designed that Mark 23, as it was being designed, HK figured out that they could do a lot of things to make it better. But of course, the military being the military is like, no, this gun functions through salt, through dust, grime. We're not going to change a damn thing. HK's like, no, we really can. So what eventually came about was the USP 45. In every way, I consider the USP 45 to be the bodybuilder version of the Mark 23, where it went on a cutting routine. It is just as strong, just as reliable, just as accurate, and all that kind of stuff, but in a smaller, more manageable package. Because the Mark 23, if you've ever held one before, it's an enormous handgun, just a very large handgun. So unless you have monster hands and you can just grip that thing no problem, first off, you got problems with your monster hands, then you're probably going to want a handgun that is of a more applicable size to a normal sized human, or a Teutonic knight, since it was made by HK. In any case, this is a very interesting weapon. It's a lot of stuff that was borrowed from the Mark 23. So as we go through this, we'll talk about that stuff. We'll talk about what makes it what, and we're going to talk about a lot of the pros and cons that come to this particular pistol, and we're going to get into it. First things first, people always say, hey, 9mm versus 45. Well, we will be answering that question in a future video. But as far as like which is better, people always say, hey, 9mm, there's been a lot of advancements made in ballistics, therefore I want to carry 9mm. It's just as powerful as 45. Well, the same advances in ballistics have also occurred at the 45, which is now becoming a gigachad round as well. Not quite 10mm status, but gigachad junior round or something along those lines. In any case, moving to the HK 45, the first thing that we have to talk about is the barrel. The barrel on the USP 45 is very interesting. First off, we have that excellent cold hammer forged Teutonic steel barrel that has polygonal rifling. Now, a lot of arguments about polygonal rifling. That being said, this is an exceptionally accurate weapon for a couple reasons. What you have to understand is that when the Mark 23 program was occurring to create that weapon, prior to that, these operators were using highly customized 1911s. A highly customized, hand-fitted 1911 is an exceptionally accurate weapon. So when SOCOM came to the table, they were like, we want a production handgun that is just as match grade as those 1911s are. That's no small feat. Now, you have to understand also that the Mark 23, the USP, is a very typical Browning short recoil operated weapon. Because of that, they're not incredibly accurate. There's a little bit of slop in the slide between the barrel and everything that happens. It's not always going to rest at the same point, especially as the round is exiting the barrel. Now, what HK has done on the Mark 23 that transferred over to the USP is they added this little rubber O-ring. So as that slug travels down the barrel, that O-ring is going to expand and help center that barrel in place on the slide to ensure that we have consistent, accurate shots. Now, it should be noted that without an O-ring, you're totally going to be fine. This is there for that match grade accuracy. Now, it should be noted that these are also on your competition weapons, your tactical weapons, not on every USP, but when you have your tactical one, you're certainly going to notice that it's there. So we have that. Now, a really interesting thing about the cold hammer forged barrels is that they're, of course, exceptionally long-lived. They have incredible durability. Very famously, they would put a squib in the handgun, and then they would take a live round and fire it. A squib is a slug that has not exited the barrel, and they would then load a round and fire and shoot that squib out. That will typically detonate most handguns. On the HK USP and the Mark 23, it simply bulged the barrel and launched both rounds out. Once the barrel was either sanded down, or if the bulge wasn't big enough to cause any function issues, the weapon would simply fire and would hold accuracy better than most modern handguns. So there's a lot to be said about how strong these weapons are. James Williamson himself has noted that he's seen squib loads where the USP has just shot it out, and it's been completely fine after he resanded the barrel down with no real appreciable change in accuracy. That's something right there. And a lot of people ask me, why do I spend so much time talking about barrels? Well, in many ways, the barrel is the engine of the firearm. What an engine is to a car, that barrel is to a handgun. So having an exceptional barrel with such longevity is important, and even doubly so when it comes to a .45 caliber. Because if you don't already know, .45 ACP is a fairly low pressure round. What that means is, combined with all this, with how well the barrel is made and the longevity that it sees, coupled with that low pressure .45 caliber round, you have a weapon that's essentially going to outlast you, civilization, everything. Some, gorilla's going to pick it up in 40 million years and start using it. That's the way it's going to go. It's going to outlive you. And just like everything, it's over-engineered, right? Is it really necessary? Probably not, but it's freaking cool. There is a weapon at the HK Armor's course from a police department. I think it has something like 200,000 rounds on it. And they have a go, no-go gauge for the barrel, and it's about 2 inches of the rifling that are shot out, or the polygonal rifling that are shot out, and the rest is fine. So the weapon can still hold accuracy. That's crazy. So certainly erosion, but weapon's been going. Now going to the end of the weapon right here, you of course see that this looks a little bit different from your typical tactical barrels. And the reason for that is we do have a cam system on here. So going down the barrel, of course, we have a threaded portion. Now, if you don't already know, the threads on the HK USP are reversed. They're not right-handed, they're left-handed, which is a bit of an ass pain, because then you have to get an adapter. I've asked HK, they never give me an answer. They just laugh, mostly at me. So it's very embarrassing. I have very low self-esteem, so it's tough to deal with. But in any case, at the end here, of course, we have something different. What we have here is a cam system from Griffin Armament. Now, not sponsored by them or anything like that. I just think it's a cool system. So typically, pistol suppressors, you fire them, pistol's going to unscrew. It's not good for it, right? Exceptionally reliable. Now, we've talked enough about the barrels. Let's move on to the slide here. Now, when it comes to the slide, how do we say this? There are a lot of weapons out there. A lot of weapons that aren't around anymore. There's a lot of ugly weapons. I can't think of any weapon released in the last 15 years maybe that have looked like good to me, where I'm like, that is a sexy looking handgun. I mean, I understand there's some reproductions and stuff, but unless it's a reproduction, I'm like, it's not that attractive looking. Now, when you look at something like the USP, I know this is subjective, but I think it looks good. It looks sexy. And maybe it's because I grew up playing video games and Counter-Strike, obviously, and watching Vincent in Collateral and making me, I feel like him when I have this, but the lines are so clean on the slide. It is such an evocative, such a simplistic and an aggressive look to it. I just love the way the HK USP looks. Now, beyond that, the slide is of course bomb-proof, and also the finish on it is corrosion and wear resistant. Now, this particular one is a very old USP, and you can see that it has very little wear. I've shot, I think, north of 5,000 rounds on this guy at this point, and it's just working fine. So we have to give it to them for how good the finish is, how just well made the slide is. Now, when it comes to sights, of course, the sights on this guy are a little bit different from what you typically see. That's because the previous owner, this is a used weapon, installed different sights. In any case, the stock sights are fine. On the tactical model, you have suppressor height sights to see over the suppressor, because with these ones, I'm aiming through the suppressor, which is okay, but not ideal at all. Now, another thing that you have to understand is that the USP does use a dual action spring system. Now, for guys who've used the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 Glocks, I understand that's not that big of a deal. But you have to understand at the time it was, because it was a kind of a new concept. Now, they do say that the .45 the HK USP 45 does reduce recoil by 30% with the dual action spring system. Hard to tell. I don't have a non-dual action spring system to save, like shoot and be like, yeah, 30%. But I will say that of all the 45 caliber service handguns that I have, that the USP is among the softest. It is a wonderful pistol to shoot. So I have no doubt that the Teutonic engineers over at HK have done some good things with it. Of course, moving down from there, we do have our accessory rail. This is the most common complaint. People are like, why can't I put my Surefire X300U on this without an adapter? This is annoying. You have to understand, when this was made, there wasn't, a standard when it came to attaching a light to your handgun. So this was actually very forward thinking, and they did partner with Insight for an early light that just worked right on there, and it wasn't like the 1911 Surefire 610Rs that were like out to here, which are a vibe. But it was very cool for the time. So now, if you need to put a light on, you do have to get an adapter that allows you to use, the universal or the Picatinny rail on there, and it works okay in my usage. Typically, I'm just not running a light on it. I did in part of the intro just to show you guys that it can be done, but they don't tend to be incredibly secure, in my opinion. Going back from there, we do have our controls. Now, when it comes to the slide release, we do have the largest slide release known to mankind on the HK USP 45, and it comes down to what was important to them. So guys with big, thick Nomex, tactical gloves back in the day, being able to feel and hit that slide release precisely, a little bit larger. And for some people, this can cause an issue. So of course, this handgun was made at a time when grips are a little bit different. With our modern grip, of course, with both thumbs forward, this can sometimes present an issue. So especially if you have smaller hands, maybe your thumb might rest right on that slide stop. But if you have normal man hands, you're going to be okay. Your thumb will be just past that slide stop pin. And, if your hands are so small that they're resting on the slide stop, you have to modify your grip a little bit or deal with the fact that you never hit slide lock, just like you do on your Glock. Or if you don't shoot, then you'll never have to reload. Big brain moment. Now from there, of course, we have our safety. So our safety is both a safety and a decocker. So there's a couple things going on here. First off, several ways to carry this weapon. You can, of course, carry it with the hammer back, safety on, cocked and locked. You can carry it with the hammer down and safety on, which is excessive, but it depends on the military or the law enforcement agency or just your own personal preferences there. In any case, you have options. When I've been carrying this, I've typically carried cocked and locked because I think that's the quickest. Sometimes I've carried it with hammer down, with safety off. Safety always off. But in any case, I do enjoy carrying this quite a bit. Some people say that's too large, but honestly, I carry a full-size Glock as well typically, so this is really not big of a deal, especially out in the Pacific Northwest where everyone has on a coat, so no one's looking anyhow. Some people have noted that they have problems with their thumb hitting the decocker when they're firing and kind of screwing up their shooting. For me personally, where my palm lies, it typically braces that safety from doing anything crazy. In all my rounds, I've never had a problem with it. Now, moving down from there, we do have our magazine release. Let's talk about it. A lot of people have a problem with the HK magazine release. It is a paddle type release, which means you push down on it. And it's a little bit odd. Now, I will say that paddle release allows the catch to be at the very front. This means that there's less points of ingress of dirt material into the magazines, leads to perhaps a more reliable magazine. James Williamson wasn't sure on that one. Makes sense to me. Now, a lot of people do have a problem with the magazine release. It is a paddle type release. Now, the good thing about it is it allows for one point where the mag locks into the weapon. This allows for less points of ingress of dirt and other materials into the magazine to help screw it up. So that is nice as we're ejecting mags and picking them up, all that kind of stuff. I enjoy it. Now, when it comes to your manual of arms on your HK USP, there are a lot of questions about how you're going to reload it. So especially from slide lock, right? So typically what I do as far as the magazine release is after I go to slide lock, I'm going to take my finger, put it up against the frame. I'm going to take my middle finger and hit that paddle release. At that point, just like in 1911, you're going to take your fresh mag, you're going to turn it up, and then you can simply roll your thumb up over the top and hit that slide release. Or of course, if you live in 2008, you can power stroke that and get that thing up. Gross motor skills. Or if you have really big thumbs, you can just reach around and just drop that safety with your giant thumb. But then at that point you have, really big thumbs, and that's kind of awkward for everybody. Nobody likes that. So quick note. So anyhow, just like in 1911, so if we take our 1911 right here and we do the same thing. So this is an older weapon. Therefore, we will be using a snap cap on it because we want to treat it nicely. we do have an original two-tone World War I magazine. Pretty cool. In any case, just like a 1911, when you insert that in, you're going to roll your support hand up and then drop that. Same thing with that HK USP. So is it as quick as a Glock where you just, not quite, are the milliseconds going to count? Possibly. I'm not going to count it against the HK USP. I believe that with training and with, you can learn to be just as fast with it. Obviously, I'm more attuned to something with a more easy to reach magazine release. I'm not going to really hold it against the gun in any way. I've been avoiding it. It brings us to the trigger. Probably the worst part about the HK USP. HK fanboys freaking out on life support right now, inhaling the copium. But, I've seen a lot of people say that the HK trigger is really, really good, or they said that the USP trigger is really, really bad. I think it lies somewhere right in the middle, maybe a little bit towards the bad side. In my opinion, it's a little bit worse than a Glock trigger, which is not saying much. The Glock trigger is perfectly serviceable. It could certainly be better, especially for a hammer-fired weapon. But in any case, let's go set trigger together. So you can see right there that we have a solid 3 millimeters of play before we get into the first trigger pull. I will say that this trigger pull has kind of lightened up a little bit over the years. I would put it at around 5.5 pounds or so. So get into it, 3.5 millimeters, not 5.5-ish. I mean, I measured it. But in any case, I hit that wall. The wall is really interesting on the HK USP. It feels like you're rolling over like a ball bearing. It's smooth, but it's an odd sensation. There we go, we got our release. All right, let's feel the reset. It comes forward, so once we hit our reset, right there, you can feel that. You're not right against the wall on that reset, which is odd. You still have to pull about 1 millimeter into the wall again, and then you get that release. So that's kind of atypical from what I have gotten used to with a lot of different, more modern tactical guns, where once you hit that reset, you're typically right up against that wall. So it takes a little bit of kind of relearning as you begin to shoot the USP a lot more, where you kind of have to relearn that reset a little bit. And it's not that big of a deal, but it's just something to think about. So trigger, not great, could be a lot better. But that does bring us to, I think, one of the more interesting parts of the HK USP, and that is magazine. On the USP 45, the magazine, body, and spring are the same as the Mark 23. We've talked about a lot of similarities between the two, and there are a lot of internal differences between the two weapons. But like the O-ring, it also shares that magazine, spring, and body. And as you know, that Mark 23, including the magazine, went through a lot of very crazy, very intense testing to ensure that it was a incredibly reliable weapon. So it's really cool that they use the same magazine. Now, the base plates are a little bit different. I can't remember which one fits which, whether it's USP mags fit Mark 23 of the base plate or the Mark 23 base plate works with the USP. I'm sure somebody will hop in there. It's kind of low on my radar of information to get. But in any case, spring and body, and with the changed base plate, you can use it in either weapon. And of course, beyond there, these weapons are, magnificently reliable, so you won't have any troubles with them. There aren't really any extendos for this bad boy, so if you're wanting to really, get this thing clapped out, not so much something you're gonna be able to do. 12+1. Interestingly enough, due to the contour changes on the HK45, it doesn't quite hold as many rounds. Also, I think the HK45 is a little bit ugly. Sorry. I think the USP is just a cooler looking gun, in my opinion. Now, beyond that, when it comes to the grip angle is wonderful, feels great, and then the texturing on the front and back, as well as the side, is perfect. Now, that being said, my particular weapon is so used that it's gotten kind of smooth. I will likely add some rubber to it at some point to give myself a better grip. But as it comes from the factory, more than enough grip to hold on to that weapon through thick and thin, through slippery and all that kind of goodness. So that kind of brings us to the end with the HK USP 45. So, what are my thoughts on it? I think it's probably one of the best 45 caliber service weapons currently out there. There are a couple others that rank high with it, but if you're looking for a 45 caliber weapon that's full size for service or whatever type of use you want it for, you really can't go wrong with the USP. It's been noted to be exceptionally reliable, to be exceptionally accurate, and to have that longevity that a lot of other handguns don't have. Like, parts just really don't break all that often on the USP. So you can be rest assured that if this is a weapon that you want to really serve you for a long time, that you're gonna have a good time with the USP. There are, of course, other weapons that match it in terms of reliability, longevity, and accuracy. But of course, the video today is on this bad boy. Now that being said, it's not all good. The accessory rail kind of sucks to add a light onto there. I've never had good luck with it, so that kind of sucks. And then of course the trigger could 100% be better than what it is. But no weapon's perfect, except for John Moses Browning with his 1911. Just kidding. There's better weapons. I just committed heresy. I'm going to get struck down. It's a giant lightning bolt. In any case, if you can get your hands on the USP, 100% do it. You're not going to be sad that you have a USP at any point. The biggest thing that comes down to is, can you afford the 45 caliber ammo to feed this and to train with this? Because if you don't train with this, you're still going to suck with it. You're going to go to a course and not know what you're doing or how to shoot it or how to do your follow-up shots, because the 45 is a little bit more to control. So make sure that you get training. Tons of great guys that get training from Travis Haley, probably my dad, Haley Strategic, Pat McNamara, Cogworks, Bear Solutions, great guys who want to give you knowledge. Make sure that you make yourself the weapon and become good with it, because otherwise nothing else matters. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I've got nothing else for you. Final thing for you guys. So it's been the winter, Christmas, good food, probably not working out. Hopefully you are working out. And if you aren't working out, you need to start. Because you're going through the winter, you're feeling like crap, you're getting sick, and you're like, why am I feeling this way? Well, it's because you're not working out and you're not eating right. So work out, do some cardio, get fit. That will make you feel so much better. It will make you a better person overall. Your mind works better when you're fit. Make sure that you hone those abilities, because fitness goes hand in hand with all this stuff. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got nothing else for you.